Did you know that in a busy city full of people, a scary killer was walking among them? He had already killed 7 teenagers, but not in any normal way. Before killing, he would put thick red lipstick and dark black makeup on their faces, making them look like creepy dolls. Then he would carefully place their bodies, sitting or standing like lifeless dolls. After that, he would write strange messages in blood on mirrors or walls near the bodies. No one knew why. What did those messages mean? The police were confused and didn't know where to start. Who was this shadow hiding in the city? Why was he doing this? And would he kill again? The whole city was scared, and the search for the doll-faced killer had just started. It all started on a cold night in autumn, when the first teenage girl was found dead in an old, empty warehouse at the edge of the city. Her body was sitting upright on a broken chair, like a doll placed carefully for display. But what shocked the police the most was her face, painted with thick, dark makeup, her lips smeared with dark red lipstick, and her eyes covered in black shadows that made her look like a monster. Next to her, on a cracked mirror, someone had written in dripping blood the words, "Beauty and Death." The police had no idea what to make of it. Was it a warning? A clue? Or just the killer's twisted signature? Within just a few weeks, 2 more teenagers vanished without a trace. When their bodies were found, the horrifying pattern was the same. Their faces painted with thick red lipstick and dark black eyeshadow, posed like lifeless dolls. Near them, fresh messages written in blood appeared on the walls, chilling phrases like "silence is golden" and "the final act." No one could understand what those words meant, but everyone knew they were meant to scare. Panic quickly spread across the city. Parents stopped letting their children walk alone, and schools locked their doors tighter than ever before. Every shadow seemed to hide the killer. Every quiet street felt dangerous. It was as if the killer was watching, waiting for the perfect moment to strike again. The police were desperate. They had no suspects, no leads, and no idea how to stop this nightmare. The city felt trapped in a dark, invisible web spun by a killer who seemed smarter than anyone thought possible. Who was this person who could vanish without a trace, leaving behind only these twisted messages? What did the blood words mean? Were they clues, threats, or something else? And most terrifying of all, where would he strike next? Every day the fear grew stronger, and the city waited, holding its breath, knowing that the next victim could be anyone. The hunt for the doll-faced killer had become a race against time, and the killer was always one step ahead. Detective Evelyn Hart was put in charge of the case. She was sharp, determined, and never gave up. She studied every detail of the crime scenes carefully. She noticed the makeup was always the same. Thick, uneven red lipstick and dark black eyeshadow, like a mask made to scare. The poses were always perfect, as if the killer wanted to show off his work. But the messages written in blood on mirrors and walls confused her the most. The words seemed full of meaning but didn't explain anything clearly. The killer was playing a game, and the police were the players, trying to find his next move. The media called the killer the Dollmaker, because he turned his victims into horrifying dolls before killing them. Every new murder made the city more scared. Teenagers stopped going out at night. Evelyn felt the pressure. The killer was smart, careful, and always one step ahead. He wasn't just killing, he was creating a terrifying art, and everyone was watching in horror. Detective Evelyn knew this was no ordinary killer. Each crime scene was like a twisted gallery where horror and artistry collided. The killer didn't just murder his victims. He staged them as if setting up a macabre exhibition. Every detail was deliberate. Every smear of makeup, every pose. Every blood-written message was a piece of a disturbing puzzle. The murder scenes shared a hauntingly similar pattern. The victims, always teenage girls, were found posed like dolls, their bodies arranged unnaturally. Some were seated upright on broken chairs, backs straight, hands resting limply on their laps or hanging by their sides. Others were found standing, balanced carefully as if frozen in time, with faces tilted toward mirrors or windows. The killer's hands were precise. He didn't just dump the bodies. He carefully placed each one with purpose. What made the scenes even more terrifying was the makeup. The victims' faces were grotesquely transformed. Thick layers of theatrical makeup covered their skin, distorting their natural features. The lipstick was always a deep, blood red, applied messily yet intentionally, extending beyond lips to create a chilling smile. Their eyes were painted with dark, heavy eyeshadow that created deep shadows, making their empty gazes look hollow and haunting. Black eyeliner was smudged to resemble tears or cracks, as if their faces were fragile porcelain dolls breaking apart. But it wasn't just the bodies and makeup that chilled the investigators. Near each victim, the killer left a message, scrawled in blood on reflective surfaces, mirrors, windows, or shiny tiles. The words were cryptic, poetic, and taunting. Beauty and death, silence is golden, the final act, and later, the Dollmaker's revenge. Each phrase seemed carefully chosen, hinting at a dark philosophy or a message meant only for some unseen audience. Sometimes the writing was neat and deliberate. Other times it looked frantic and desperate, as if the killer's mind was fracturing with each murder. Evelyn's team found the crime scenes both maddening and mesmerizing. Forensic experts carefully documented the position of each victim, the makeup layers and the blood messages. Each body showed no signs of struggle. The victims were either stunned or unconscious when killed. The cause of death was always strangulation, with no weapons left behind. The killer's hands were bare, leaving no fingerprints, no DNA, nothing to link him directly. The investigators struggled to understand the meaning behind the killer's ritual. Was the makeup meant to erase their identities? To turn them into dolls, lifeless objects under his control? Were the messages clues, a form of twisted communication, or simply the killer's way of mocking the police? Every day brought new theories, but no clear answers. One breakthrough came when the forensic team found microscopic traces of theatrical makeup in every scene. This wasn't ordinary cosmetic makeup. It was professional grade, used in stage productions and film. The killer knew his materials and techniques, suggesting he either worked in the makeup industry or had studied it deeply. This clue pushed police to focus on local theaters, costume shops, and makeup suppliers. The killer's purchase patterns were tracked via security cameras. Footage showed a tall, thin figure frequently buying dark lipsticks and heavy makeup from small specialty stores. The man covered his face with a hood and gloves, avoiding cameras as much as possible. Despite these efforts, the glimpses were enough to give a rough description. Pale skin, slender hands, and movements that were both careful and purposeful. As the investigation deepened, the police found disturbing links to the killer's possible past. The broken doll found at one scene was no accident. It was handcrafted, painted in the same grotesque style as the victims' faces, with smeared lipstick and blackened eyes. This doll seemed to be a symbol, a message from the killer. It suggested a personal trauma involving dolls or childhood. Memories turned dark and violent. Through old records, Evelyn discovered a burned-down toy factory on the city's edge, where several children had died in a fire years ago. The factory had a history of abuse and cruelty, and the victims' poses resembled dolls produced in that factory. This connection led the investigation to Faisal, a former factory worker obsessed with dolls, whose home was filled with hundreds of handmade dolls painted in the killer's signature style. Faisal's obsession made him a prime suspect, but the discovery of a new victim far from Faisal's reach proved he wasn't the killer. The pressure on the police mounted as the city slipped into fear. Parents armed their children with whistles and pepper spray. Schools doubled security, and every reflective surface was a source of anxiety. The killer's messages became bolder and more taunting, suggesting he was aware of the police's movements and was deliberately toying with them. CCTV footage finally captured a shadowy figure near the sixth murder scene. The figure moved with eerie calmness, carrying a small makeup kit, gloved hands carefully handling the tools of his grisly craft. Facial recognition identified a man with a troubled past, mental health issues, a history of stalking teenage girls, and no known stable address. The police raided his apartment to find horrifying evidence: blood-stained makeup brushes, broken doll parts, and a journal filled with ramblings about art, punishment, and society's sins. The man's writings revealed a fractured mind, obsessed with control and beauty twisted by pain. But just as the police closed in, he vanished without a trace, slipping into the city's shadows once again. The final victim was found in a busy park, a chilling scene that shook the city to its core. Her makeup was the darkest yet, black lipstick smeared in a grimace, eyes painted like cracked porcelain dolls, and her body posed sitting on a bench, her head tilted toward an upside-down message on a nearby wall. The show was over. The message felt like a grim farewell, a sign that the killer's dark performance had reached its finale, at least for now. Despite every effort, the Dollmaker was never caught. Some believe he fled the city, Others think he still watches silently, waiting for the moment to resume his horrifying art. The case remains open, a shadow hanging over the city, a terrifying reminder that evil can hide behind beauty and nightmares can live among us just beneath the surface. Detective Evelyn Hart sat alone in her dimly lit office, the weight of the case pressing heavily on her shoulders. Around her were dozens of photographs, the lifeless faces of the victims, their painted lips curled into twisted smiles, eyes staring blankly as if pleading for justice. The cryptic messages written in blood haunted her thoughts. What was the meaning behind those chilling words? Was the Dollmaker trying to tell a story? Send a warning? Or was it a sick game? One that he enjoyed playing at the city's expense. She often found herself replaying every detail of the case in her mind. The poses, the makeup, the broken doll, the burned-down toy factory that seemed to connect the dots, Faisal's innocent but troubled face, the man who vanished before his arrest. Every lead that slipped through her fingers was a haunting reminder of how close she had come, and yet how far she still was from the truth. Night after night, Evelyn stared out her window at the city skyline. Neon lights flickered and the sounds of life carried on as if nothing had happened. But beneath the surface, fear and suspicion lingered. Parents still whispered warnings to their children about the Dollmaker. Schools kept their hallways under watchful eyes, and every mirror or window reflected the possibility of darkness watching back. The Dollmaker was more than a killer. He was a symbol of fear, a twisted artist who forced the city to confront its own shadows. His murders were not just crimes. They were performances, dark exhibitions meant to shock, terrify, and confuse. Yet behind this horrific facade, Evelyn believed there was a broken soul, someone shaped by pain, loss, and memories too heavy to bear. In the weeks that followed the last murder, the city grew quieter. The frenzy of the investigation slowed, but Evelyn's determination only grew stronger. She pored over old case files, searching for any detail others had missed. Late one night, she stumbled on a faded photograph. Buried deep in the archives, a group of children, smiling outside the toy factory years before the fire. Among them was a boy, his face half hidden by shadows, clutching a doll that looked hauntingly familiar. Something about that image struck Evelyn. She realized the Dollmaker's twisted artistry was born from a past that had never healed, a past filled with trauma, loss, and silent screams. The question was, could she find him before he struck again? Or was the Dollmaker destined to remain a ghost haunting the city forever? As she closed the file and looked once more at the faces frozen in terror and pain, Evelyn whispered to herself, "This isn't over." Not yet, because in the shadows somewhere beyond the city lights, the Dollmaker's story was still unfolding, and as long as the mystery remained unsolved, the nightmare was far from finished. The investigation grew increasingly complex as Detective Evelyn Hart and her team dug deeper into the Dollmaker's twisted world. Every piece of evidence seemed carefully placed to confuse and mislead. The theatrical makeup found at the scenes wasn't sold openly. It came from specialized suppliers, who catered mostly to film studios and professional theater companies. Tracking the purchases was like chasing shadows. Buyers used fake names, paid in cash, and avoided cameras whenever possible. Evelyn expanded her inquiry beyond the usual suspects. She interviewed makeup artists, costume designers, and even professional doll makers, trying to find someone who recognized the killer's signature style. One evening, a local artist mentioned a mysterious man who frequented a small, run-down doll restoration shop on the city's outskirts. The shopkeeper described him as polite but secretive, obsessed with porcelain dolls and their delicate features. Following this lead, Evelyn visited the shop herself. The air inside was thick with dust and a faint scent of paint and glue. Rows of antique dolls lined the walls, many with cracked faces and haunting expressions. The shopkeeper remembered the man well. He would spend hours silently studying the dolls, sometimes painting dark lipstick or smudging their eyes. It was almost as if he was practicing on the dolls before moving on to real victims. Back at headquarters, the forensic team continued painstaking work. They re-examined fibers found on the victim's clothing and dust from the warehouse floor, searching for anything that could pinpoint the killer's movements. Surveillance footage from nearby streets was reviewed frame by frame, looking for the faintest sign of the Dollmaker's passage. One breakthrough came from a routine traffic camera, showing a car speeding away from the scene of the third murder. Though the image was grainy, a partial license plate was visible. Cross-referencing vehicle registrations narrowed the list to a handful of individuals. Each name was carefully checked against the known suspects and their whereabouts on the nights of the murders. Simultaneously, Evelyn coordinated with behavioral analysts who profiled the dollmaker's psychological state. They believed the killer was someone with deep-seated childhood trauma, likely linked to abandonment or abuse, explaining his obsession with dolls and control. This insight guided the team to revisit cold cases and missing persons reports, searching for any overlooked connections. Despite all the leads, the dollmaker remained elusive. Evelyn often found herself staring at the photos of the victims, feeling the weight of their silence. The killer's ability to vanish without a trace gnawed at her resolve, but she refused to let fear paralyze the investigation. Every unanswered question was fuel for her determination. The city watched and waited, but the dollmaker was never caught. Somewhere in the shadows, he continued to plan, always one step ahead, forever lurking just beyond the reach of justice.